So just a quick, I guess, recap to where we were. We were actually on verse 64, but I thought we'd read verses 62 and 63 to kind of get us to 64 and have it make more sense, have us have the right context. So Matthew chapter 26, verses 62 and 63. And the high priest arose and said to him, "Do you answer nothing? What is it these men testify against you?" But Jesus kept silent, and the high priest answered and said to him, "I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "It is as you said. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven." So now we see Jesus respond. Let's see. I don't remember how much we talked about here. I don't think we talked very much about this, but we see that Jesus gives them the response they want to incriminate himself in their eyes, because they will take this, remember, as blasphemy. And remember, they started asking him about his disciples and his doctrine to begin with, because they wanted the disciples as well. Now, Jesus' answer at first, does that sound kind of vague or something? Sound kind of odd? It might sound a little that way. It does to me when I read that. But he's partially quoting a verse, which you might know it, your Bible might tell you, or you might know it, from Daniel. And they know what that is, and they know that basically he's saying to them that he is like God, right? He's the Son of God, or he's God. So this answer is sufficient. It's from Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. That's where it is. And the one question we have here is on the hereafter. What does that mean, where he says hereafter? It means basically from now on, or the next time you see me. You might think of it that way. Or in the future, or from here forward. Meaning he knows he's going to go to his death. They're not going to see him again until everybody sees him when he returns in power and glory to come and get all of us. So that's just something we know, and that's what he's basically telling them. Next time you see me, you'll see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming, right, to get his people. That's the idea. So to them, he's essentially saying he is God. And if we look here, this is part of what he's referencing here out of Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. He's saying that, if you'll notice, they're close. It's not perfect because of the two translation sources, I suppose, or whatever. But nonetheless, it's close enough they recognize what he's saying. And it's from Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. "I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him." Now, do you remember who the Ancient of Days is? Right. The Ancient of Days, it's God, but it's also, we see a similarity in Revelation of that comparison to Jesus in Revelation. So, look, Jesus is God, right? So we have that conundrum again of the three persons as we think of it, but God, they're all God. It's all God. So anyway, the Ancient of Days is God, the Son of Man, Jesus. So they would know and understand that he's saying that he is the Son of Man, and to them that would be equating himself with God, right? All right. So, all right. There's one thing here that's worth mentioning. When it says here, Jesus said to him, "It is as you said," right? He's talking to Caiaphas, so that you is singular. But then he changes in the rest of this where he says, "Nevertheless, I say to you," and hereafter you, those yous are plural. He's speaking to the whole council that's there, just so everybody's aware. So he's answering Caiaphas, but then he speaks to all of them so that they will, kind of, you could think of that as a warning, or however you want to think of that, but then he's telling them all that's what they're going to see. So, all right. So it could have been, and for some of them, if you remember, some on the council secretly did follow Jesus. So for some of them, it might have even been an encouragement, if you think about it that way, if they were following him. Yes, Pat. Pat. Right. He is. And that is, I mean, he's using the Old Testament prophecy, but that's his prophecy now, right? Because he's claiming that. He's saying, yeah, that's me. Yes, man.
When you first asked about this verse, it said, does this seem a little vague? What I thought you meant was that first part where it is as you said. Because in my translation, it says, you have said it yourself, or something like that. It's a little more vague. It's almost like, did I quite say yes?
Yes, he's not quite saying yes. And that answer is a little vague, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned. But we'll see in Luke's gospel is more definitive. It's a very much clearer answer, more clear answer. Yeah, more clear. So it's a clearer answer when we get to Luke. And yeah, your translation may say something that's better.
Well, it's almost more vague. My translation says.
Oh, okay.
This is more definitive.
Oh, okay. So what did yours say again?
It says, you yourself said it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. So this is a little better than that, yeah.
So but in English, we could say, yeah, you said it, and that sort of means yes, but I'm not sure if that's what we're going to understand. I don't know.
Well, when we get to Luke, we're going to see this, and it will be clearer, so that will be better. But, yeah. So to me, it always read as a little vague, and, I always wondered about that. But then again, like I said, when we get to Luke, we'll see that it's a clearer thing than that. Let's see. All right. So, at this point, really, when Jesus answered this, all he had to do was say no, right? If he wanted to skip out of this in a human way. Now that would have been a lie, okay? And he wouldn't do that. So I'm not trying to imply that he would at all. But I'm just saying from a human standpoint, all he would have had to do was say no, and it would have ended this, right? And I'm sure from a human standpoint, there was some temptation for that, but Jesus did not do that, of course. He was not going to say a lie just to protect himself or anything like that. So, but I just wanted to point that out. There's all these little temptations every step of the way as he's going through this. There's all these normal temptations that any of us would have. Well, maybe if I lie, I can get out of this, right? I mean, if I'm sitting there looking at what he's going to go through, yeah, I might do that. I don't know. I mean, that's a very hard thing. So I don't want to pretend that it's not. Now, and then of course too, there's, that's not even counting the divine power he has that he could leave or get out of it if he wanted to, but he's willing to do all of this for us. And that's the point. The point is he's willingly, every step of the way, going through all that he goes through for us. And he could easily get out of all this in so many different ways, and he doesn't. Yes, Pat.
It's almost like they're asking a rhetorical question because we know ourselves.
In his mind, maybe that is a little, it could be a little sarcastic, I guess. You could see that, yeah.
I think it could be a little sarcastic. If I said something similar to that, well, you said so. Words to that effect.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that could be read that way a little bit, yeah, man.
And it seems like Jesus does this, like in 27:11, when he's talking to Pilate. Are you the king of the Jews? You yourself say it. I'm not sure what your translation says. But that's the final.
It's something very similar. See if I can find it real fast. But yeah, it's something very similar in Matthew. It's something to that.
I think really literally, it's almost like that's what.
In my translation. Let's see. Yeah, it's like he's not. Okay, in mine it says, it is as you say.
Well,
now, that's very definitive, but it could be a little smart alecky or sarcastic or something. I don't think Jesus is really being I think he's being respectful every step of the way. Okay, I don't think he's being disrespecting or anything like that, because that would not be his way. But nonetheless, it is as you say, is what it says in that one. So let's see. But anyway, so Jesus tells them the truth. Really, is what it comes down to. He tells them the truth, and it's the truth they can't tolerate and they can't stand, and it's the truth that they're going to kill him for. That's the way I look at that and the way I see this. He's telling them the truth, and they can't tolerate that. Is there anything on this verse? Yes, Rachel.
I'm wondering if he had said "I am," it would have been just like back in the garden when everybody fell back. And
that's a
if
thought.
he had kept saying "I am," I feel like things would have been a little worse. Or
yeah,
I don't know how they could have been much worse, but I don't know. It took longer.
I don't know.
Maybe he just didn't want to reveal that power to them because he wanted them to think that they were still in charge.
Yes, now that's true, because that actually makes good sense. Rachel's saying, she wondered if he had said "I am" all these times, if he would still have that same power go forth like he did in the garden. But then if he did that, what would that change the events in some way? Speed them up, make them go slower, or somehow ruin things? It could be that he would have scared some of them straight. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I guess we won't know the answer to that, but that's an interesting thought too. And maybe that's what he's avoiding saying here is, "I am," one of those things. So if we look here, we can see how the high priest reacts here in the next verses 65 and 66. Then the high priest tore his clothes, saying, "He has spoken blasphemy. What further need do we have of witnesses? Look, now you have heard his blasphemy. What do you think?" They answered and said, "He is deserving of death." Now, why did the high priest tear his clothes? I don't know if y'all remember. Technically, he's not supposed to do that. Yes.
Sort of. It's often a sign of mourning, but he's sort of making a show of oh, this horrible thing that he said. Did
Yes.
you hear that? Ah.
That's how I took it. I took it he's kind of over dramatizing, and it's a sign to everybody else, because they're all in cahoots, to kind of fall in line and agree with him. He's got what he wants, right? So this is something that they would do. That's supposed to be something they did, like you said, for mourning or distress or something like that. And actually the high priest, because he's supposed to be wearing, I think, special clothes, I don't think he was ever supposed to tear his clothes or robes. They may have made some exception, and maybe that's why he did it here. I'm not sure. But again, this would have been a sign to all of them that they had what they need. They can move forward now, and they all agree with him. He's deserving death, or at least this makes it sound like they all agree with him. Now, we know there's at least a couple, like Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, anyway, that were following Jesus, at least to some extent. So now again, Jesus could have stopped this at any time. Now, let's see. All right, so anything else on these verses, though? I don't see anything we haven't covered. All right. Okay, so let's move to the next verses. Now here, this is after they've decided that he deserves death. This is still at night before the next day. Okay, this is still the, what do you call it? Like the secret illegal trials they were having at night. So this is still basically right after that. Verses 67 and 68. Then they spat in his face and beat him, and others struck him with the palms of their hands, saying, "Prophesy to us, Christ, who is the one who struck you?" Now these are just cruel examples of violence, but they have a certain message to them if we can think about that for a minute. What do you think these acts kind of might be a message or symbolize? Oh, Pat, I'm sorry.
I think one of the other documents said that they blindfolded, and that's what I'm saying.
It does in one of them. Yes, it does. You're right. We're going to go there And I'm sorry, I can't remember right now if it was Mark. I think it was Mark, but yeah, I think it does say that. I remember reading that. Well, okay. So what I was getting out of this, one kind of message or one thing this kind of symbolizes is their disdain for his claim to be the Son of God. You know, to their minds, they are proving to him that they have power over him. He does not have power over them. Now, we know better than that. They did not know that, okay? And then two, if you think about this, what they're saying, prophesy to us, they are showing that he has no prophetic power. He is no prophet for them to be afraid of, if you remember the Old Testament. Yes, what?
Well, you know, when they spit in his face, that's one of the lowest forms of anything you can do to another human being is to spit in their face.
Yeah, that's very
Disgusting.
Yeah, it's just.
And they did that to my Christ. You know,
yeah.
They really wanted to show their disdain for him.
Right.
In the worst ways.
Yeah, they did. And that's one of the things they did, just to be cruel and mean and vicious and degrading. Yes, Pat?
If I understand it right, this is before he got near the Roman government with the Pilate and stuff. So this
right.
Sanhedrin.
Yes, this would be, right, good point. This is the Sanhedrin, maybe some of those temple guards, but this is not the Romans or, like you say, Pilate or any of them. This is before that. This is that night before. They're going to, the best way I can describe this is this. After this trial, the second trial, this one with Caiaphas, they're going to kind of like, there's going to be a break, and then they're going to get back together in the morning, early in the morning, but it has to be morning because I think I said this before, you can't really go wake up Pilate, the governor, in the middle of the night. That's not going to do you very good. So they reconvene in the morning, they reconfirm, and we'll read this, they reconfirm their conviction, and then they take him to Pilate. But right here, this is right after the trial with Caiaphas, so this is still in the nighttime that this is happening here. And one of the Gospels we'll see too mentions that it's the men who are holding him that does this. But the way this reads to me, sometimes I think some of the religious leaders are involved too. But nonetheless, we'll see that as well. All right. So if we look at, did you have something, Matt? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, tie this back to Isaiah 50. Verse 6. I imagine those events are happening here, but I think it's space because it says in Isaiah 50, verse 6, I gave my back to those who strike me and my cheeks to those who pluck out the beard. I did not hide my face from dishonor and spitting. So some of those prophecies that relate to the Messiah.
Yeah, and this may be.
Say about plucking the beard, but I think the prophecy.
Right. That is one of the things that is not mentioned in the Gospels, plucking the beard. But, like you said, we believe these Old Testament prophecies do cover some things that aren't in the Gospel. Like here in Isaiah 50, verse 6 is what Matt was talking about. I gave my back to those who struck me and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from shame and spitting. See, he was taking all of that for us. He was taking all of that, no matter what it was, no matter how awful you think of it or anything. He was taking all of that for us, and including the plucked out the beard. I've seen that before, and I know it's not in the Gospels, but this may not cover let me see if I can say this right. We have this instance here, but there's more stuff that happens to him too when the Romans do have a hold of him. So this could cover a lot of that actually, or it could go with a lot of that. So just something to be aware of. But yeah, definitely, that's one of those prophecies that would cover some of this too. Oh, forgot where I was going, but. If we look at Deuteronomy 18 verses 22, this is kind of like what they're proving out, right? They think they're proving this out. So if you look over here, and this is where they've asked they've asked God basically, how do we know a good prophet from a false prophet? How do we know who's really saying the word of God, right? And this is God's response to them. When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not happen or come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You shall not be afraid of him. So to them, in a mean, cruel way, they're proving that Jesus does not have any prophetic power. He's not a prophet. And it's all very cruel, kind of like schoolyard bully stuff in a way, but to a worse extreme. And then the awful thing is that really, to a large degree, Jesus predicted this type of thing was going to happen to him. He may not have gone into great detail, but if we look back a few chapters, Matthew 20, verses 18 and 19, he says, "Behold, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death," which they've already done at this point, "and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify, and the third day he will rise again." So he's already predicted a lot of these things, maybe not this one in particular, but nonetheless, everything's going as he said it would go. So these men don't know that, though, but I'm just saying it's kind of odd. It's a sad thing in a way. Okay, so anyway, back to our verses here. So then when we look at who did these things, we already talked about this. Let's see. So, I mean, when I look at these people who are doing this, though, I have to think, I mean, are they really following God? Is this, this does not seem like a godly thing. This was not something that was supposed to happen at one of their trials. Just like at our trials, just because you're found guilty, they don't immediately start beating you and throwing stuff at you and all, I mean, not supposed to happen. Anyway, it loses all semblance of a real trial here, and it really becomes a sham, which it was, but you really see it for the sham it is at this point. They just hate him at this point, and it shows how depraved and corrupt they are. And it reminds me of a parable, again, the wicked vine dressers, how they rose up and they killed the son, thinking they were going to keep the master's property. And they're all going to kill the son, thinking they're going to keep their nation. I mean, it's a similar idea. And in a way, that parable is more prophecy maybe than just parable because of that. Because that's their intention. The council's intention is to save the nation through killing the Lord. So, all right. And this is representative of some of the hate we see in the world today, where people, they don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know the truth that Jesus is Lord, that he is the Son of God. They don't want to know the truth of God's word. Any source of moral authority that would be over them is something they cannot stand and they hate. And that's just the way some folks are. And we really, need to pray for them and try to reach them. But that happens, and it's a sign of that spirit of the Antichrist that's been loose since way back when, right? I mean, John tells us that spirit is out in the world and people are following it. Anything on these verses? Anything else? Okay, so before we move on, I do want to mention I'll just mention this. Some people would say, because of the way we talk about this and the way we talk about the Jews, that maybe we're prejudiced against Jews, but that's not the case. Most of the times in the Gospels, when they refer to the Jews, they're just talking about the leaders, the religious leaders and stuff. They're not talking about every Jew in Jerusalem or everybody in the nation. So just a reminder, we're not talking about all the Jews. And if we were, then we'd have to be talking about the disciples and Jesus too, and we're not doing that. So just a reminder, it's not that we're prejudiced against them in any way. If we say the council, the Sanhedrin, that's those people, and they were all Jews. That doesn't mean we're prejudiced against all Jews who ever lived or who lives today. So just to mention that. Let's see. And we have to remember this is God's plan. How can you be prejudiced against the Jews? This is God's plan. This is his plan. Jesus is following it willingly. So Now, if we look here at John chapter 10, this is one of the reasons that we know Jesus is following and doing this willingly of his own accord. These verses 17 and 18, and Jesus is talking to the Jews, and he's talking to some of the religious leaders there. Therefore, my Father loves me because I lay down my life that I may take it again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This command I have received from my Father. So, again, this is how we know Jesus could have stopped this process at any time, but for our sakes, he continued and he gave his life for us. So we're not prejudiced against any of them. We recognize from the Bible, throughout the Bible, there are a lot of Israelites and Jews, even religious leaders. Some are pretty bad, but there's also a lot of good people in the Old Testament, and they're all Israelites and Jews, right? So they're all meant to be a lesson to us, and a lot of times they just reflect our own good and bad qualities. There's nothing really unusual about them except that God chose them. They're just humans. They have a lot of the same problems we do. There's a lot of them that are very good and admirable. If we think of like David and Solomon, they have a lot of admirable traits. So anyway, just continuing on that vein, I guess. And we need to remember that Jesus actually died for all these people, even these guys that are abusing him. He died for all of them. And I know I cringe and I always think it's horrible about all of this, but he died for all of them. Even the guys that nail him to the cross, everybody. So, all right, let's continue with Mark. Mark chapter 14, going to look at verses 51. I forget exactly how far down, but let me check. To 64. Nope, 65. Okay, 65. Sorry, I should have put that on this first thing. But anyway, Mark chapter 14, we're going to go verses 51 to 65, but we'll take each of these a little bit at a time. Now, this is something that's only in Mark. This is not mentioned anywhere else, okay? This happens when Jesus is initially arrested in the garden, and only Mark records this. Now, a certain young man followed him, Jesus, having a linen cloth thrown around his naked body, and the young men laid hold of him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. Now, I saw where most people theorize this is Mark himself somehow. I don't know. A few thought maybe it was Lazarus. Again, we don't know. We have no way to know. However, from the account, you would assume that it is a disciple of the Lord, because that's who was there with him in the garden, was him and disciples. So this does show how their fear had kind of overtaken them, right? I mean, here he is. I don't know why he's running around with just a cloth on anyway, but here he just runs off without it naked because he's that afraid, right? So they're not really willing to stand with Jesus and go like to jail or to die for him at this time because of that fear that was overrunning them. And we may face times like this in our lives where we're so afraid that we just fail momentarily, and we just desert everything. But understand that's just our human weakness, and just like the disciples, we can recover from that, and we can come back stronger. So don't let a setback or something even embarrassing like this make you think it's all over or you're a complete failure. You're not. God understands, and it's not, in the scheme of things, it's not that big a deal. And this could also be looked at as an example of, in a slight way, as losing faith in Jesus, right? Being found naked without the assurance of the Lord, that type of thing. Without the Lord and our faith in him, we're defenseless without that in this spiritual battle in this life. All right, so we'll move on from that. Like I said, unless anybody has anything on that, that was just it's one of those oddities that you don't know a lot about, and there's not a lot said about it. So verses 53 and 54, and they led Jesus away to the high priest, and with him were assembled all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes. But Peter followed him at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. Now, some of this is basically going to be the same as Matthew, and there might be a few little things, like I think we've already mentioned, that might be a little different. But I do just want to remind us, notice who is present at this trial. Peter and all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes. Now, Mark doesn't mention John, but he mentions Peter, and he talks about all the council being there. So all the religious leaders are there. And again, they've got them all out here late at night so that they can condemn Jesus. And again, we see Peter has followed them. Now, verses 55 and 56, now the chief priests and all the council sought testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. For many bore false witness against him, but their testimonies did not agree. Now, in verse 55, the Greek word for council, it's the word for Sanhedrin, and the specific idea here from what I'd read in a reference is that this is the gathering of their highest court, right? I know I keep mentioning this, the Sanhedrin, that's all of them, but the idea is that this is their highest court. It would be like going before our Supreme Court or something, except our Supreme Court don't handle things like this. But anyway, it's going before the highest court that they have. It's the full body of the Sanhedrin. Now, what's the problem with their false witnesses?
They didn't get their act together.
They couldn't even get their lie together, could they?
You know, if you're going to have false witnesses, you need to have for them to agree.
Yep. You need your false witnesses. If you're going to have them lie, you need to have them at least lie together and be the same. And that was a problem they were having here. They don't agree. They need witnesses that do agree, because they want the trial to look good, at least in a superficial way, just so they can say they did things right, even though they're way off. If we look at verses 57 to 59, then some rose up and bore false witness against him, saying, we heard him say, I will destroy this temple with hands, and within 3 days I will build another made without hands. But even then did their not even then did their testimony agree. So this kind of goes back to Matthew, where they said they did have a couple of witnesses that said something similar to this. Now, Mark has this worded differently, but something similar to this. But obviously, even they did not totally agree. So here they had another problem there. So this better explains the high priest and all of them, their frustrations. And I forgot, we're out of time. Does anybody have anything else this evening? Here I had my alarm go off and everything, and I still forgot. I apologize. So we will pick up here Sunday morning, Lord willing.